She's just after your money, Nathan. See it for what it is. His mother's words, laced with ice, dripped like poison. But what Claire Crawford didn't know, what none of them knew as they sneered at Ashley, the librarian, was the truth about the Hamilton Scholarship. 15 years ago, a scared kid on the South Side almost gave up. He almost vanished. Then came her kindness, a single phone call, a promise, a life change forever. Now that kid's back, standing at the altar, staring right at Ashley. He knows they have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. The secret I'd been hiding for 15 years was finally revealed. And let me tell you, nobody saw this coming. If you love stories about unexpected connections and how hidden truths can change everything, hit that like button right now and let's dive into this incredible journey together. My name is Ashley, and I live what most people would call a simple life. I work as a librarian in downtown Chicago, drive a 10-year-old Honda, and my idea of a fancy dinner is takeout from the Italian place down the street. But here's what people don't know about me. I choose to live this way. I could afford a mansion, designer clothes, and a fleet of luxury cars. But I've learned that happiness doesn't come from material things. 6 months ago, I met Nathan Crawford at my local coffee shop. He was this incredibly handsome businessman who always ordered the same thing: black coffee, no sugar, and a blueberry muffin. What caught my attention wasn't his expensive suit or his confident demeanor. It was how he treated everyone around him. He remembered the barista's name, held doors open for strangers, and never once looked at his phone while talking to someone. Nathan had no idea who I really was when we started dating, and I preferred it that way. For the first time in years, someone liked me for me, not for my family name or my bank account. We spent our evenings talking about books, taking long walks through the city, and sharing quiet dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants that served the best food you've ever tasted. 3 weeks ago, Nathan nervously approached the topic that had been weighing on his mind. "Ashley," he said, fidgeting with his coffee cup, "my sister Victoria is getting married next month. It's going to be this huge society event with all the wealthy families in Chicago. I know it's not your scene, but would you consider being my date?" I could see the worry in his eyes. He was genuinely concerned that his world might overwhelm me, that I might feel out of place among his family's elite circle. If only he knew the truth. I'd grown up attending these exact types of events, rubbing shoulders with Chicago's most powerful families, making small talk about charity galas and investment portfolios. "I'd love to go with you," I told him, and the relief that washed over his face made my heart flutter. But as the wedding day approached, Nathan started preparing me for what I was about to encounter. "My family can be a bit intense," he said carefully. "They're very protective of me, especially my mother. She might come across as cold at first, but she means well." What Nathan didn't know was that I'd already heard of the Crawford family. They were old money, the kind of people who'd built their fortune 3 generations ago and had been living off it ever since. They were influential, sure, but they weren't nearly as wealthy as they pretended to be. Still, I nodded and smiled, letting Nathan believe I was just his sweet, innocent librarian girlfriend who needed protection from his family's judgment. The first warning sign came 2 days before the wedding. Nathan's mother, Claire Crawford, invited me for lunch at the most exclusive restaurant in the city. I could have told her that I'd dined there countless times, that the head chef knew my family personally, but instead I played the part of the impressed small-town girl. Claire was exactly what I expected, perfectly polished, with silver hair styled to perfection, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She ordered for both of us without asking what I preferred, then spent the first 10 minutes of our meal talking about the restaurant's prestigious reputation and how difficult it was to get reservations. "So, Ashley," she finally said, setting down her wine glass with deliberate precision, "Nathan tells me you work at a library. Yes, I love books. There's something peaceful about being surrounded by all those stories." She nodded in that patronizing way wealthy people do when they're trying to appear understanding. How quaint. "And your family? What do they do?" This was the moment I'd been dreading. I could have told her the truth, that my family owned Hamilton Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in the Midwest. That our family foundation had donated more money to Chicago's cultural institutions than the Crawford family had ever seen. Instead, I kept it simple. My parents passed away when I was young. I was raised by my aunt and uncle. They're retired now. Claire's expression softened slightly, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. No family money, no connections, no social standing. In her world, I was nobody. The conversation took a more direct turn after our main course arrived. Ashley, I'm going to be frank with you. Nathan is my only son, and he's going to inherit a substantial fortune someday. I need to know that the women in his life are there for the right reasons. I took a slow sip of water, buying myself time to respond calmly. Mrs. Crawford, I care about Nathan deeply. His money has never been part of our relationship. Really? She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Then you won't have any problem accepting this. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $50,000. This is for you to walk away from Nathan and never contact him again. Consider it a clean break. No hard feelings. I stared at the check for a long moment, fighting the urge to laugh. $50,000. I'd spent more than that on a single charity auction, an item last year. But instead of revealing how insulting her offer was, I slowly tore the check in half. Mrs. Crawford, I understand you're trying to protect your son, but I'm not going anywhere. Nathan and I will figure out our relationship without your financial incentives. Her face went cold and I knew I just made an enemy. We'll see about that, dear. The next morning, Nathan called me, his voice tight with frustration. Ashley, I'm so sorry. My mother told me about your lunch. I had no idea she was going to do that. It's okay, Nathan. I understand she's looking out for you. No, it's not okay. She had no right to insult you like that. I've made it clear to her that you're important to me, and she needs to respect that. But I knew Claire Crawford wasn't going to give up that easily. The wedding was in 2 days, and I had a feeling the real battle was just beginning. The morning of Victoria's wedding, I stood in front of my closet trying to decide what to wear. In my real wardrobe, hidden in the back, hung several designer dresses that would have been perfect for the occasion. Valentino, Oscar de Arenta, custom pieces from Europe that cost more than most people's cars. But Ashley, the librarian, wouldn't own anything like that. Instead, I chose a simple cream-colored dress I'd bought at a department store. It was elegant enough for a wedding, but modest enough to fit my cover story. I did my own hair and makeup, keeping everything natural and understated. Nathan picked me up in his BMW, looking absolutely gorgeous in his tailored tuxedo. You look beautiful, he said, kissing my cheek. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be. The wedding venue was the Palmer House, one of Chicago's most prestigious hotels. As we walked through the ornate lobby, I couldn't help but remember my own family's events held in these same rooms. The crystal chandeliers, the marble columns, the thick carpets that muffled every footstep. It all felt like coming home, but I couldn't let it show. The guest list was exactly what I'd expected. Chicago's social elite, all dressed in their finest attire, air-kissing and making small talk about their latest vacations to Europe or their children's acceptances to Ivy League schools. I recognized at least a dozen faces from charity events I'd attended, but none of them would recognize me now. In their world, the help was invisible, and I'd successfully made myself invisible. Victoria, the bride, was holding court near the entrance to the ceremony space. She was beautiful in that polished society girl way. Perfect blonde hair, flawless makeup, and a wedding dress that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. When she saw Nathan and me approaching, her smile faltered slightly. Nathan, darling. She air-kissed her brother, then turned to me with a smile that could have frozen fire. And you must be Ashley. I've heard so much about you. Congratulations on your wedding, Victoria. You look absolutely stunning. Thank you. She looked me up and down, taking in my simple dress and understated jewelry. How refreshing to see someone who isn't trying so hard. Very authentic. The insult was delivered with such sweetness that Nathan missed it entirely, but I caught every poisonous word. I smiled right back at her. I believe in letting inner beauty shine through. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but before she could respond, her maid of honor whisked her away for photographs. As we found our seats, I could feel the stares and hear the whispered conversations around us. Nathan was completely oblivious, chatting with a few family friends, but I caught every comment. Is that Nathan's girlfriend? She looks so ordinary. I heard she works at a library. Can you imagine? Poor Nathan. He's obviously going through some kind of phase. Well, at least we know it won't last long. Men like Nathan always come to their senses eventually. The ceremony was about to begin when Claire Crawford made her way over to us. She was resplendent in royal purple, dripping with diamonds that were probably family heirlooms. "Ashley, dear," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "I hope you're comfortable. I know this type of event can be overwhelming for someone from your background." Several heads turned our way, and I felt Nathan tense beside me. "Mother, please." "Oh, I didn't mean anything by it," Claire continued with false innocence. "It's just that not everyone is used to this level of society. Ashley, if you need anything explained, the proper protocol, which fork to use, that sort of thing, please don't hesitate to ask." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Around us, I could see people watching our interaction with barely concealed amusement. This was entertainment for them, watching the poor girl get put in her place by Chicago royalty. I placed my hand on Nathan's arm before he could say something he'd regret to his mother. "Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. Your concern is touching, but I think I'll manage just fine." She gave me that same icy smile and glided away. But the damage was done. Everyone within earshot now knew exactly how the Crawford family viewed Nathan's girlfriend. The ceremony began with all the pomp and circumstance you'd expect from a society wedding. The string quartet played perfectly, the flowers were arranged with mathematical precision, and every guest was positioned according to their social ranking. I sat in the third row, which was probably intended as another subtle insult, close enough to be included, but far enough back to know my place. Victoria walked down the aisle on her father's arm, looking every inch the perfect society bride. Her groom, Kevin Martinez, waited at the altar with a bright smile. He was handsome in a clean-cut, all-American way, and I could see why Victoria had chosen him. According to the program, he was a successful businessman who'd built his company from the ground up, a self-made man, exactly the kind of person this crowd would normally look down on. But his success had earned him acceptance into their circle. The minister began the ceremony with the traditional opening words about love and commitment. Kevin and Victoria exchanged the usual vows about having and holding, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Everything was proceeding exactly as expected. But then something strange happened. As Victoria was speaking her vows, Kevin's attention seemed to wander. His eyes swept across the assembled guests, and when his gaze landed on our section, he stopped midnightly at me. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. Maybe he was looking at someone behind me or beside me, but his expression was changing from polite attention to something I couldn't quite identify. Confusion, recognition, shock. Victoria noticed that her groom wasn't listening to her vows. "Kevin," she said quietly, but the microphone picked it up. Kevin blinked as if coming out of a trance and turned back to his bride. "Sorry, I just thought I saw someone I knew." The ceremony continued, but I noticed Kevin's eyes kept drifting back to me. Each time his expression grew more intense, more focused. It was making me uncomfortable, and I could see Nathan beginning to notice as well. "Is everything okay?" Nathan whispered to me. "I think the groom keeps looking at me, but I have no idea why." Nathan glanced toward the altar and frowned. "That's weird. Do you know him?" I searched my memory, but I was certain I'd never met Kevin Martinez before in my life. Maybe he resembled someone I knew, or maybe it was just pre-wedding nerves making him distracted. But then, during the ring exchange, it happened. Kevin was supposed to repeat the minister's words. "With this ring, Ivy wed." Instead, he stopped completely. The silence stretched on for several uncomfortable seconds as everyone waited for him to continue. "Kevin," Victoria prompted again, louder this time. But Kevin wasn't looking at his bride. He was staring directly at me with an expression of absolute disbelief. And then, to everyone's shock, he stepped away from Victoria. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the microphone. There's someone here I need to speak to." The murmur that went through the crowd was immediate and electric. Victoria's face went white, then red with embarrassment and anger. "Kevin, what are you doing?" she hissed. But Kevin was already walking down the aisle toward me. Every head in the place turned to follow his movement, and I felt like I was going to die of mortification. Nathan grabbed my hand. Whether to comfort me or keep me from running, I wasn't sure. Kevin stopped directly in front of my row. Up close, I could see that his hands were shaking. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "I can't believe you're here." And then, to the absolute shock of everyone in attendance, Kevin Martinez knelt down in front of me. The collective gasp from the wedding guests was audible. Victoria let out a sound that was somewhere between a shriek and a sob. Nathan's hand tightened on mine. "Kevin, I think you have me confused with someone else," I said quietly, trying to save him from whatever breakdown he was having. But he shook his head. "No, ma'am, I could never forget you. You saved my life 15 years ago, and I've been looking for you ever since." The wedding venue fell into complete silence. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. All eyes were on Kevin, still kneeling in front of me and on my face, which I'm sure showed my complete confusion. "Kevin, I really think you have the wrong person," I said gently. "I don't know what you're talking about." He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Hamilton Industries, the scholarship program. You were the one who approved my application personally." My heart stopped. Hamilton Industries was my family's company. But how could he possibly know that I was involved with their scholarship program? 15 years ago, I was just a kid from the South Side, Kevin continued, his voice getting stronger as he found his courage. My father had died. My mother was working 3 jobs just to keep us housed and fed. I was about to drop out of high school to get a job when this miracle happened. Around us, the wedding guests were hanging on every word. Victoria had walked down from the altar and was standing at the edge of the crowd, her wedding dress rustling with each angry breath she took. I got a letter saying I'd been selected for a full scholarship, not just for college, but for everything: housing, books, living expenses, everything paid for through graduation. When I called the number on the letter to thank whoever had sponsored me, they transferred me to this young woman. Kevin's voice grew softer, more reverent. She couldn't have been much older than me, but she talked to me for an hour. She asked about my dreams, my goals, what I wanted to study. She told me that education was the key to changing not just my life, but my family's entire future. I felt my carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. I remembered that phone call. I remembered that scared, hopeful boy who'd been so grateful he'd started crying on the phone. She made me promise her 3 things, Kevin continued. First, that I would work harder than I'd ever worked in my life. Second, that once I succeeded, I would help other kids like me. And third, that I would never forget that someone believed in me when no one else did. Nathan was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Around us, the whispered conversations were growing louder as people tried to piece together what was happening. "But here's the thing," Kevin said, getting to his feet now. "The scholarship wasn't from Hamilton Industries' regular program. It was a special fund personally managed by the Hamilton family and the young woman who changed my life. She told me her name was Ashley Hamilton. The silence that followed was deafening. And then the whispers started. Hamilton? As in Hamilton Industries? Wait, is she saying she's from the Hamilton family? That's impossible. The Hamiltons are." Claire Crawford pushed through the crowd, her face a mask of disbelief and anger. "This is ridiculous. Ashley works at a library. She's nobody." But Kevin shook his head. "No, ma'am. With all due respect, this woman is the reason I am who I am today. After college, I started my own company using everything she taught me about business and giving back to the community. Every scholarship I've funded, every kid I've helped, it all started with her." He turned back to me and I could see the certainty in his eyes. "You kept your word too, didn't you? You helped other kids like me. The Hamilton Foundation has put hundreds of students through college." I couldn't deny it anymore. The truth was written all over my face, and Nathan was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "Ashley," Nathan said quietly, "is this true?" I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every single pair of eyes in the room. For 15 years, I'd kept my identity hidden from most of the world. I'd chosen to live simply, to work in jobs that brought me joy rather than prestige, to measure my worth by the lives I touched rather than the money in my bank account. But standing there with Kevin Martinez looking at me like I was his guardian angel, and Nathan looking at me like I was a stranger, I realized that the time for hiding was over. "Yes," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. It's true. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Claire Crawford's face went through about 6 different shades of white and red. Victoria let out a sound like a wounded animal. The wedding guests erupted in excited whispers that quickly grew to a dull roar. But Nathan just stared at me. "You're Ashley Hamilton from Hamilton Industries." "Yes. Your family founded Hamilton Industries in 1952. You're worth more than anyone in this room." I finished quietly. "Yes." Kevin was grinning now, tears streaming down his face. "I knew it was you. I've seen your picture in business magazines, but you always look so different in those formal photos. But your voice, your kindness, I could never forget that." Claire Crawford pushed forward, her composure completely shattered. "This is impossible. You work at a library. You drive an old car. You live in that tiny apartment." "Because I choose to," I said simply. "Money doesn't define happiness, Mrs. Crawford. I learned that a long time ago." Nathan found his voice. "Why didn't you tell me?" I turned to face him, my heart breaking at the confusion and hurt in his eyes. "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have. Every man I'd ever dated before you was more interested in my trust fund than in my personality. You were the first person in years to see me as just Ashley. But you lied to me. I never lied to you, Nathan. I just didn't tell you everything. Everything I told you about myself was true. I do work at the library because I love books. I do prefer simple pleasures to expensive ones. I do believe that character is more important than cash." Victoria finally found her voice, and it was shrill with anger. "You ruined my wedding. How dare you make this about you?" Kevin turned to his abandoned bride, and for the first time since this whole scene began, he looked guilty. "Victoria, I'm so sorry, but you have to understand, this woman changed my life. If it weren't for her, I never would have gone to college, never would have built my company, never would have been successful enough to even meet you." "I don't care," Victoria shrieked. "This is my wedding day." But the damage was done. The story was already spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Ashley Hamilton, the mysterious heiress who'd been giving away millions to charity while living like a regular person, had been hiding in plain sight. A voice from the crowd called out, "Ashley, is it true that you donated $50 million to the Children's Hospital?" Another voice, "What about the scholarship program? How many kids have you put through school?" Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me, to shake my hand, to associate themselves with the Hamilton name and fortune. The same people who'd been whispering cruel comments about me an hour ago were now pushing forward, trying to get my attention. But all I could see was Nathan standing there with that look of betrayal in his eyes. The crowd pressed closer, everyone talking at once, asking questions, making demands on my attention. But Nathan stepped between them and me, his protective instincts kicking in despite his hurt feelings. "Give her some space," he said firmly, then took my arm and guided me toward a quieter corner of the venue. Kevin followed us, still looking shell-shocked by the entire situation. "Ma'am, I want you to know how sorry I am for disrupting the wedding, but when I saw you, I just couldn't believe it. I've been hoping to find you for years, to thank you properly." "You don't need to thank me, Kevin. Seeing what you've accomplished, knowing that you've helped other kids the way I helped you, that's all the thanks I need." Victoria appeared at Kevin's elbow, her face stray with mascara, and her wedding dress wrinkled from pushing through the crowd. "Are you serious right now? You're having a conversation with her while I'm standing here in my wedding dress?" Kevin looked at his bride, his interrupted bride, with genuine remorse. "Victoria, I know this isn't how you planned your wedding day, but this woman is the reason I am who I am. Without her, there would be no successful business, no big house, none of the things that attracted you to me in the first place." "I don't care about your origin story," Victoria snapped. "I care about the fact that you abandoned me at the altar to kneel in front of another woman." She was right to be upset, and I felt terrible for my role in ruining her special day. "Victoria, I am so sorry. This is all my fault. I should have said something when I realized Kevin recognized me." But Victoria turned her fury on me. "You're sorry. You show up at my wedding pretending to be some nobody when you're actually one of the wealthiest women in Chicago. You let my groom make a scene over you, and you think sorry covers it. Claire Crawford had recovered enough to join our little group, and her expression was a mixture of embarrassment, anger, and calculation. "Ashley, dear," she said in a voice dripping with false sweetness, "I hope you can forgive my earlier behavior. I had no idea who you were." And there it was, the exact reason I'd hidden my identity in the first place. 2 hours ago, Claire Crawford had offered me money to leave her son alone. Now she was practically groveling because she discovered I had more money than her entire family. "Mrs. Crawford," I said evenly, "your behavior toward me hasn't changed who I am. I'm still the same person who was sitting in that chair when you insulted me earlier." Nathan was watching this exchange with growing understanding. "This is why you didn't tell me, isn't it? Because of people like my mother. Not just your mother, Nathan. Everyone watch how they treat me now versus how they treated me an hour ago. Nothing about me has changed except their perception of my bank account." As if to prove my point, several wedding guests approached us with bright smiles and business cards in hand. "Ashley, I don't know if you remember me, but we met at the museum gala last year. Miss Hamilton, I've been following your foundation's work. Perhaps we could discuss a partnership. Ashley, darling, you simply must come to our charity auction next month." I looked at Nathan, hoping he could see the truth in my eyes. "Do you understand now? This is why I wanted to just be Ashley the librarian with you, because with you, I could be real." Nathan studied my face for a long moment, and I could see him processing everything that had happened. The hurt was still there, but I could also see understanding beginning to dawn. "You never cared about my money," he said slowly. "I never even thought about your money. I fell in love with the man who remembered the barista's name and held doors for strangers. And I fell in love with a woman who chose books over designer bags and quiet dinners over fancy restaurants." He stepped closer to me. "I fell in love with your choices, Ashley. The fact that you could have anything you wanted, but chose a simple life. That tells me more about your character than any amount of money ever could." Claire Crawford looked like she was about to faint. "Nathan, surely you understand now how perfect Ashley would be for our family. The Hamilton name, the family connections." "Mother, stop." Nathan's voice was sharp. "You're proving her point. An hour ago you tried to pay her to leave me. Now you want to welcome her into the family because she has money. Do you see how wrong that is?" But I had heard enough. The whispers, the calculations, the sudden shift in how people were treating me. It was everything I tried to escape by living simply. "Nathan," I said quietly, "I need to get out of here." He nodded immediately. "Of course. Let me get our coats." As we prepared to leave, Kevin caught my arm gently. "Ma'am, please. I know I ruined Victoria's wedding, and I'll spend the rest of my life making that up to her. But I need you to know that everything I am, everything I've accomplished, started with your kindness to a scared kid from the South Side." I looked at this successful, confident man and still saw traces of that frightened teenager I'd spoken to on the phone 15 years ago. "Kevin, you did this. You took the opportunity and you ran with it. You worked hard. You built something meaningful, and you've helped other people along the way. That's all you, not me. But it started with you believing in me when no one else would." I smiled at him. And look how far that belief has taken both of us. Nathan and I left the wedding together, walking out through the lobby where we'd entered just a few hours earlier. But everything had changed. I was no longer Ashley, the librarian, pretending to be overwhelmed by Nathan's world. I was Ashley Hamilton, and Nathan was the man who'd fallen in love with me before he knew I was worth more than his entire family. We didn't speak until we were in his car, driving through the Chicago streets that suddenly felt different to me. I'd spent so many years hiding from who I really was. But now that the truth was out, I felt oddly liberated. "I have questions," Nathan said finally. "I figured you would." "The library job, is that real?" "Completely real. I love working there. I love the quiet, the books, the people who come in looking for answers or just for a place to belong. I don't need the salary, obviously, but the job feeds my soul. And your apartment also real?" "I could afford a mansion, but I don't want one. I like my little place with the big windows and the view of the park." Nathan was quiet for several blocks. "What else don't I know about you?" I took a deep breath. "I have a foundation that's put over 300 kids through college. I've donated to hospitals, libraries, schools, and community centers all over the Midwest. I sit on the boards of several charities, but I do it quietly without publicity. And I'm worth approximately $200 million, he whistled low. $200 million, give or take. I've never actually counted it all up. And you chose to date me anyway. I reached over and took his hand. Nathan, I didn't choose to date you despite your financial situation. I chose to date you because of who you are as a person, your kindness, your integrity, your sense of humor, the way you treat everyone with respect, regardless of their job or their bank account. Those are the things that made me fall in love with you. He pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face me. Ashley, I need you to understand something. I'm not upset that you have money. I'm upset that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. You're right, and I'm sorry. I've been hiding for so long that it became second nature. But you have to understand, every relationship I'd had before you was poisoned by my family's wealth. Men who seemed perfect turned out to be after my money. Friends who claimed to care about me were really networking for business opportunities. Your mother's reaction today. That's exactly why I was afraid to tell you. Nathan considered this. My mother was awful to you, and I'm ashamed of how she behaved. But I'm not my mother, Ashley. I've spent the last 6 months falling in love with a woman who chose a simple life over a lavish one. Learning that you're wealthy doesn't change the fact that you chose me over every rich man in Chicago. Relief flooded through me. So, we're okay. We're better than okay, but I have one condition. What's that? No more secrets. If we're going to make this work, I need to know who you really are. All of it. I nodded. Deal. But I have a condition too. Name it. I want to keep living the way we've been living. I don't want my money to change us. I still want to go to that little Italian place for dinner and take walks through the city and spend quiet evenings talking about books. Nathan smiled for the first time since the wedding disaster. I wouldn't have it any other way. As we drove through the city, I realized that Kevin had been right about one thing. Sometimes believing in people, whether it's a scared teenager who needs a scholarship or a billionaire who needs to be loved for herself, can change everything. 3 months later, Nathan and I were still together, stronger than ever. Kevin and Victoria had worked through their wedding day drama and were happily married, with Kevin insisting on naming their first child after me. Claire Crawford had eventually apologized for her behavior, though I suspected it had more to do with Nathan threatening to cut ties with her than any genuine remorse. And me, I was still Ashley the librarian who chose love over wealth, simple pleasures over expensive ones, and a man who saw my heart over my bank account. Because in the end, that's the person I'd always been, with or without the money. This story proves that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, and kindness costs nothing but means everything. Sometimes the simple girl in the corner has depths you'd never imagine. And sometimes the biggest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the love you choose. If this touched your heart, smash that subscribe button and the bell icon. I share stories like this every week that will restore your faith in humanity and remind you that real richness comes from the connections we make and the kindness we show. What's one act of kindness you've never forgotten? Tell me in the comments below. And remember, you never know whose life you might change with a simple act of compassion.